रुक जाओ एक सेकेंड, अभी मत खोलना। शुरू करो। Hello everyone, good morning. Today we will discuss PSIR paper 1, and we can see the question paper. And if you see the question paper, you know that question paper has two sections, section A and section B. And section A has 4 questions, and section B has again the next 4 questions. And if you see the question paper, right, it was moderate, it was not hard, it was not easy, but few of questions were very directly, right? So if you look at the first question, there was a 10 marker question, right? Each question has to written in 150 words, and marks were allocated 10. And if you look at the first, it was a behavioral approach to political science, then pluralist theory of state, then Locke view on revolution, then decline of liberalism, and then linkages between power and hegemony. Right? So there was a 5 questions, and all 5 questions are compulsory in paper. Section A, first question. It is compulsory to attempt. No one can leave it. Right? If I move to the second question, now here you have pair of 3, and any pair you can attempt, either 2 or 3. You have to, if you attempt 2, then you have to attempt A, B, C all. If you're attempting third, then you have to attempt A, B, C. It is not that you can attempt B from 2 and C from third. No. So if you look at question, second question, elucidate the meaning of inherent in the term political with appropriate illustrations, with example. Now, second is Marxism is the political theory of action, demanding a strict compliance with its core principles. Comment, right? And the third question was the nature of a relationship between equality of democratic citizenship and liberty of citizens is influenced by the economic equality. Comment, right? And the third question is, right? The third question is, sorry? Options, there's an instruction, and everything is written in instruction, right? The third question is the first one, the third A. The debate on human rights is caught between the limitations of both universalism and cultural relativism. Comment. Now, the B, deliberative democracy seeks to promote democratic decisions making about public issues among the citizens. Discuss. Right? And the C question is, Dharma Shastra presents a duty-centric worldview for individual and communities. Comment. Now, the fourth question is, right, the fourth A, legitimacy adds positive value to political authority and obligation. Discuss. Then B is critically examine Plato theory of forms. Now, C is, Manavendra Nath Roy, political thought highlighted the humanistic aspects of Marxism. Discuss. So these are the 4 questions, right? Similarly, there are next 4 questions in section B, right? And overall, one has to attempt 5. First and fifth are compulsory, right? Similarly, there are 5, 4 questions in the later part. We will see later on. Now let me move to the question here. And if you see the question A, yeah. The question 1A, behavioral approach to political science. Now, behavioral approach, that you have to write introduction first. And in introduction, one can start with the basics like behavioral approach developed in the US in 1950s, in the 1960s, right? It intended to transform form political science science into science, right? And value free. If you look at science which is value free, so basically it intended to make the social science value free, political science value free. Now, you have to talk about the major exponent of behavioral approach. Now, behavioral approach was initiated by the Chicago School, headed by Charles Merriam, and later on it was actually David Truman, David Easton, right, who actually talked about behavioral approach to political science, right? And basically, it talked about that there should be scientific approach to study political science and make sure that we can do some prediction in political science, like we do prediction in natural science, like earthquake or physics or chemistry. What we are able to do, we are able to do some predictions, right? So basically, it was behavioral approach try to make the social science into science through the some observation, some verification, some technique, some scientific data, some mathematical or quantification. You can say that quantification means taking something in number, right? Taking something in number. So who was the major exponent? So first you have to write about major exponent of behavioral approach was Chicago School, headed by Charles Merriam, right? Later on, David Easton becomes the pioneer of behavioral approach. Now you have written approach. Who had the major exponent? Now you need to write about the salient features of that approach, right? What was the salient features of behavioral approach? Now, if you see this scientific first was, study, right? Political science should focus on observation, right? Quantification, look at regularities and systematization, right? Political science should focus on observation, right? Regularities, systematization, right? And quantification. And quantification, right? And second, what was the political science should be theory driven. What political science should be? Political. Second is, what was their assumption? Second assumption, that political science should be theory driven and it should be, tested hypothetically, right? Through empirical observation, right? So political science should be theory driven hypothetically. Tested, right, through empirical data. Empirical data. What do you mean by empirical data? Empirical data, which is, you can observe, you can realize, or something is happening, right? Now, third is, right, political science also focus on not only analysis, but also on prediction, right? For example, if you look at science, what science does, science not only explain the phenomena, natural phenomena, right, it also focus on predictions, right, about earthquake, or about the, flood, or about, right, anything, right, about the star and moon, right? So third is, political science should not only explain political phenomena, what happened, political science should not only explain political phenomena, political phenomena like election, like election, or violence, or democracy, because democracy is a political, election is a political phenomenon, is a political phenomena, right? So political science should not explain only, should not only explain political phenomena like election, violence, or democracy, but it should also, it should also, make it predictable, make political science predictable, predictable in the future, right? What will happen, the political science should project, right? Now, if you look at next, the third point, the fourth point was, political science should be value free. It should be a pure science, right? It should be pure science like mathematics, like physics, right? So what was the next point? Political science should be like pure science, pure science, which is value. Thirdly, if you look at in the social science, there are so many value loaded word like justice, equality, and behavioral approach suggests that the political science should avoid the value loaded word in analysis like justice, liberty, equality. Making sense, right? Now the fifth present feature was, political science should avoid value loaded word, loaded, right, like justice, liberty, democracy, and equality, right? Now how we can do that? Now 6, it talks about it should focus on the behavior of an individual. How we can do it? If we study human behavior, and if we can, extract some quantifiable data, right, and we can observe systematically, then we can explain things systematically, right, and we can do some prediction, right? So it's focus on that, right? It should focus on observation, right, quantifiable data, systematic analysis, and so on. Now, David Easton had given 8 principles for behavioral approach, right? What are those principles? Now, the space has gone. Now, let me talk about the 8 principles by David Easton. Easton. Now, first principle was regularities. It means just you see the how things occur regularly. For example, valence, how valence occurs regularly, right? Third, second is quantification. Nahi, there is no need of explanation. You have to write, right? The eight point, right? And no need to explanation because you have limited word. Now you have to come to criticism. You have to come to criticism. So regularities, quantification, verification, right? Systematization, right? Then pure science. Then value free. Then integration. These are the major principles of behavioral approach. However, behavioral approach was criticized by many scholars, right? Because behavioral approach failed to explain student movement, environmental crises, women's movement, and women argue that, right? Women movement, feminists argue that behavioral approach is failed to analyze the women's subordination and subjugation and where justice is major point, right? Justice, equality, liberty, which is a value loaded word, right? Which is very important. And that is criticism you have to put. And then if you look at even David Easton left the behavioral approach in 1969 and he gave call for post-behavioralism, right? And post-behavioralism focused on two major theme. One is action, second is relevance, right? There should be some relevance, right? So if you look at many scholars criticize behavioral approach. Now this way you have to, with criticism and with the David Easton, you have to stop. However, if you see that there are large impact of behavioralism on social science, like a study of elections, right? Or study of elections is a major outcome of the behavioral approach that was initiated not only in the US but around the globe, right? The study of election is called psephology. Making sense? Behavioral approach. Now come to the pluralist theory of state. And I hope, yeah, I have taught the pluralist theory of state. Now, pluralist theory of state is a sociological interpretation of state. Pluralist theory of state is a, so first you have to write introduction. Pluralist theory is a sociological interpretation of a state, and it has lineage in liberal democratic theory. Liberal democratic theory. Pluralist, like you write Puthi name like Harold Lasky, Ernest Barker, Robert Dull, right? Criticized monastic theory of sovereignty or monist theory of state. Now you have ended with the monist theory of state. Now you have to talk about STAT. Now you have to talk about monastic theory of state. Monastic theory of state believes that power holds by the state. The state is a supreme power, right? And the supreme power of the state is undivided, unlimited, perpetual, and absolute, right? Philosophers like Jean Bodin and Thomas Hobbes believe that a state holds power and it is not divided. It is absolute. It is unlimited. So monist theory of state believes that, right, that a state is a sovereign entity. Sovereign entity, and its sovereignty and its sovereignty is, unlimited, undivided, undivided, and absolute. And absolute. Thomas Hobbes, you have to write name, cite name. Thomas Hobbes and Jean Bodin believed in such view of state. Believed in such view of state. Right? Now, pluralist believes that a state is not something holds absolute power. A state is an association among several associations. Right? A state is a servant, not a master. A state is a servant, not a master. Why is it so? Because if you look at, in democracy, right, there are several organizations. There are corporate organizations, there are farmers, there are women associations, right? Similarly, there is a state is an institutions, right? And the state is a institutions among all the institutions, right? So a state is not a master, a state is basically a moderator. It moderates, right? So first you have to talk about the basic principles of pluralist. Pluralist attacked monistic theory of state and believed that a state is an association among several associations. Several associations like, farmers group, women's association, corporate group, right? Therefore, there is a pluralistic nature of society. How a state can be monistic? State has to be plural, right? State has to be plural because all these organizations, corporate groups, women association, farmers group, influences the state, and a state takes decision not on its own but also influenced by the farmers, corporate, right? Women's association, lawyers association, right? So state is not sovereign, right, monistic, but it is a pluralistic, right? Therefore, a state's decision is is influenced by these organizations. Now we have already written the exponent, major exponent. Now you have to talk about the central tenet of pluralist state, right? Central basic features of pluralist state. Now first, society is plural, so state has to be plural. Society is plural, so a state has to be plural, right? Because there are many organizations. Now second, a state is a mere moderator rather than master. A state is a moderator among the several associations. A state is a moderator, right, among several associations. associations, right? Third, a state is a service state, right? A state, why we need a state? Because a state must provide services like security services, right? Or education, health is all our services, basic necessity, right? So a state has to be a service state. A state has to be a service provider state. Now these are the basic. Now come to the criticism. Now pluralist theory of state can be criticized by elitist theory of state. An elitist believes that a state is not plural, but basically a state is ruled by the elite, right? And C. Wright Mill argue that there are three set of elitists who rules the American state, like politicians, military, and corporate, right? So elitists also criticize pluralist theory of state. Got the idea? And with criticism that we have to end. Fine. Now let me talk about John Locke on revolution. Now look at revolution is the first. So first you have to, in introduction, you have to talk about revolution. In intro, you have to talk about revolution. Revolution is a central concept in political philosophy, right? And many philosophers have actually given his view on revolution, like Aristotle, right? Like Aristotle had given revolution, or Thomas Hobbes. So first you have to write revolution. Revolution is a contested concept in political theory, in Western political theory. It has been proposed by many philosophers. It has been proposed by many philosophers. Aristotle, Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Karl Marx, Lenin, and Mao. Now with this you have to write introduction, that is sufficient. 3-4 lines introduction is sufficient, right? Now come to the John Locke, right? John Locke is a John Locke is a father of liberalism, right? Who believes that individuals' right to life, liberty, and property should be secured in the state, right? And whenever state is not governing in the favor of the people, then people has right to revolt, right? People have right to revolt. For example, a state can impose taxation with the consent of the people. Otherwise, it becomes, mandatory for the people to revolt, to change the government. Revolution matlab change, right? Revolution matlab change, right? So first, then you have to talk about John Locke. John Locke is father of liberalism. Who believes in limited state, limited government, then individual right, consent, toleration, and representative democracy. And representative democracy, right? Unlike Hobbes, now you have to compare with Hobbes. Unlike Hobbes, who argued that individual can only revolt when right to life is under threat. Hobbes argued that individual has a right to revolt in case of life is in danger, right? But Hobbes moves forward and Locke moves forward and he argued that it is not when the right to life is under threat, but only also when right to property is under threat. Right? When you have right to property under threat, people have right to revolt. Right to revolt. And he argued that a state cannot impose taxation, a state cannot make law without, arbitrary law, basically. And he also argued that a state cannot delegate the legislative power to the other organization. In such case, individual has to revolt. Individual has to revolt. So unlike Hobbes, who argues that individual has a right to revolt when life is in danger. Right? John Locke argued that right, it is become imperative to revolt. It is become imperative to revolt when a state is unable to protect a right to life, liberty, and property. Right? Now, the next paragraph you have to write. Locke argue that individual can or people can change the government when government becomes arbitrary, who does not respect the consent of the individual, imposes taxes without consent. Right? Now, if you look at the American Revolution is basically Lockean in spirit. You have to write American Revolution. American Revolution was a Lockean in spirit. Now, in the American Revolution, there was one slogan: no taxation without representation. No taxation without representation. Right? Yes. So if you look at he was ardent supporter of representative democracy, and he argued that every community should be represented. Right? Right? Yeah. Yeah, that is T. Utha ke fenkne lage the. Right? So you have to write about American Revolution and the Locke, and then you have to end. Because we have compared already, right? Then if you can criticize, एनालिसिस में थोड़ा बड़ा करना पड़ेगा, तभी तो छोटा कर पाओगे. In analysis we have to, अभी जो किया है मैंने, just mention American Revolution was in a spirit of Locke, or Lockean spirit. Fine. And then although Marx differed from John Locke on revolution. For Marx, Locke was actually a proponent of bourgeoisie society and capitalism. Right? So that with this we can end. Fine. Now come to the decline of liberalism. There is a big theory on liberalism and multiple theory on liberalism. Right? Now if you see, this question has come to test the practical knowledge of a student. Right? This question has appeared to test the practical knowledge of the students, whether they knew the rotten things, they have actually mug up the things, or they do understand the international scenario. Right? So first you write to liberalism. Right? What is liberalism? So first it starts with introduction. Liberalism is a revolutionary idea developed in 17th century, traveled in 18th, 19th century, which focused on individual right, self-autonomy, freedom, right, tolerations, private property, right, tolerance and secularism, right. So first you have to write liberalism. Liberalism was a revolutionary idea, revolutionary political ideology, ideology, right, started in 17th century, right, and traveled to 18th and 19th century, right. It has dominated the world 250 years, right. Major exponent, or you can say John Locke, Adam Smith, J.S. Mill, right, Herbert Spencer, are major exponent of लिबरलिज्म. नाउ इंट्रोडक्शन डाल के छोड़ देना है, राइट. उसके बाद यहां पर डिक्लाइन पूछ रहा है, तो आपको बताना है कि हाउ मेनी टाइम्स लिबरलिज्म फेसेस चैलेंज एंड व्हाट इज हैपनिंग टुडे, राइट. सो फर्स्ट यू राइट, राइट, कि लिबरलिज्म फर्स्ट फॉर इन मिड ऑफ 19th century liberalism faced challenge from socialism. In 20th century, in the 20th century, liberalism was challenged by the rise of fascism and Stalinism in Europe. नेक्स्ट क्लास में अभी बस समझ लीजिए, तो फिर एनालिसिस नहीं हो पाएगा. वी हैव लिमिटेड टाइम, राइट. राइज ऑफ फासिज्म एंड स्टालिनिज्म इन यूरोप, राइट. However, by 1990, right, liberalism emerged as a victorious idea and practice due to collapse of USSR, right. Democratic, the collapse of USSR, fall of Berlin Wall, expansion of democracy, what is the problem with this? Not responding. What should I do? It's working now. I hope it's working. Yeah. Fall of Berlin Wall, expansion of democracy, right. The rise of third world, right. Now that is the rise. Now in 21st century, liberalism actually declining due to the rise of authoritarianism, right. Russia-China war, right. Democratic backsliding. This is something contemporary they are asking, right. In 21st century, liberalism is on decline. Liberalism is on decline due to following regions. Now you make 1, 2, at least 4, 5 point, 3, 4 and 5 point, right. Now first is there's a democratic retreat or democratic breakdown worldwide, and rise of electoral authoritarianism and rise of electoral authoritarianism, example like India and US. Second is there is a global rise of the right. Second is it is electoral authoritarianism according to the VDAM report. There is a global rise of the far right. Like US, India, France, Italy, Austria. In Austria, the new prime minister is basically far right. Recently won election. Austria, right? Netherlands, and so on. Switzerland, right? And so on. Right. The third is, there is a fall of liberal institutions like US. Like UN, not US. Yeah. There is a fall of liberal political institution like UN, right? Then the Russia-Ukraine war has made an impact on liberalism. Now, the next you can write, there are multiple points. It is testing your contemporary knowledge, right? There's a rise of religious fundamentalism, terrorism, localism, deglobalization, right? There is a rise of religious fundamentalism, right? Terrorism, right? Localism that has led to decline of liberalism. Right. Now you have to come to the conclusion, right? Because you are writing in the points, so you have to write conclusion, right? In the 21st century, there is a decline of liberalism in several parts of the world. However, there is a need to revive liberal idea, right? Liberal democratic idea to respect liberty, equality, and equal world order, right? Which respect equality for all nations. And with this, one can end. Now come to the linkages between power and hegemony. Now in this question, one has to write about first power and then hegemony, right? So first start with power, right? Again, power is an essentially contested concept in political theory. In simple meaning, power means domination or control, and power has always capacity to produce effect, and power has Power has capacity to produce effect. Now this is the fourth line is more than sufficient. Now when now right link power with the hegemony, right? When power is exercised with the consent of the people, with the consent of the people, it is called hegemony. It is called hegemony. What does it mean? Power plus consent is equal to hegemony. Power plus consent is equal to hegemony. Now how consent is evolved, how consent is manufactured. Now here Gramsci is very important to explain, right? Now Antonio Gramsci argued that, right? Gramsci argued that, you know, right? It is civil society like school, like school, religious guru, right? Family, you know, family, market, and so on, produce consent, right? And those whosoever produce consent, Mark Gramsci called organic intellectual, right? In capitalism, bourgeoisie exercise power through consent rather than coercion. Right? Now we have explained Gramsci. Now if one can include the new Gramsci, right? Like Althusser, right? Like Althusser, who also argued that, you know, that state uses ideological state apparatus, right? Althusser argues that a state exercises power through ideological state apparatus. State apparatus, right? When ideological state apparatus becomes fail, a state use coercive state apparatus, repressive state apparatus, right? Now similarly, you know, Herbert Marcus argued that capitalism has made the man one dimensional. We are not able to think beyond capitalism, and in capitalism, you know, we think, right? We think under the influence of capitalism, right? So how capitalism, you know, exercise power? Of course through the consent, and there's a hegemony of the capitalism around the globe, right? So with this one can end, right? Now let me move to the next question, second A, right? We have limited time, so we have to finish it, right? Now elucidate the meaning inherent in the term political. Let me change the pen. Meaning the term Political with appropriate illustration. With appropriate illustration. Now, you have to start with the word political. The word political in introduction. The word political has come from the root word polis. The root word polis, right? And it referred to collective action within the city state. Within the city state, like holding public office. Holding public office. Or contesting election. Or seeking protection of the state. Or seeking protection of the state. Right? Now, with this, you have to end introduction. There is some issue in PPT. बुलाइए तो जरा उनको. There is a multiple problem. या अब ठीक हो गया. अपने आप डिसअपीयर हो जाता है, अपने आप फ्रैक्चर्ड हो जाता है, आधा दिखता व्हाइट, पूरा बोर्ड व्हाइट दिख जाता है. आपको दिखेगा अभी क्या हो रहा है. ऑफिस ऑफ द contest election or seeking protection of the state. Now, in the due course of time, the meaning of political changed. Meaning of political changed. For instance, Machiavelli argues that politics is nothing but a struggle for power. Argues that politics is nothing but a struggle for power. Right? Or Thomas Hobbes, explained the nature of man. Explained the nature of man. Hobbes argued that man desired for power, power after power, and that desire ceases into death. Man desire for power, and power after power, and that desire ceases into death. Right? Ceases into death. Now K. Kaplan argues that politics is concerned with distribution of power. Power that shapes politics, that shapes society. Since we have used the term politics, right? So this is another interpretation of the term political. Now, then, if you look at Karl Marx or Marx, explain politics in terms of class struggle. Explain politics in terms of class struggle. For him, history of existing society is the history of class struggle. Is the history of class struggle. Now you can extend it, right? You can extend it that Marx believes that the liberal politics, he believes that the liberal politics helps the bourgeoisie to maintain its dominance over the proletariat. So this is with the Marxist perspective. Now let me talk about the feminist perspective. Right? The feminist, especially radical feminist, argues that personal is political. Personal is political. They criticize the dichotomy created by the philosophers like Aristotle to John Rawls. Right? They criticized the dichotomy between public and private. Created by philosophers like Aristotle to John Rawls. Now, Aristotle argued that states should intervene in the public sphere because power manipulation takes place in the public sphere. There is a law and order in the public sphere, and family should be left alone. Right? Now, radical feminists argued that within the family or there is a law and order problem. Within the family, there is an inequality. Within the family, there is a inequality. And therefore, a state should also make law in order to make the family more egalitarian. So now a state is intervening into the family. And this, so now with this, the personal, the private sphere has become political. Now with this, we can change the paragraph and write about, David Easton. David Easton argued that politics can be defined as authoritative allocation of value. Authoritative allocation of value, right? He proposed system theory, right? One can make a picture over here. David Easton argued that politics can be defined authoritative allocation of value, right? He proposed input output approach to explain politics, right? So every state there is a political system, and there is in every political system there is some demand, right? For example, to make law or contest election, right, or make policy. So there is a demand. At the same time, there is a supply. There is a support, right? Support means we pay taxes, we obey the government. That is support. Now this, is converted in this political system, and there is a policy, right? There is a law, and that is called output. So this is David Easton analysis of political. Now one can write about, Harold Laswell. Well, argued that in his book, Who Gets What and How? Who gets what and how? His book name was Politics, Who Gets What and How, right? And he said that politics is about negotiation. The term political is about negotiation, right? And then one can write about the another. For example, does animal also do politics? And there is a book, whether does chimpanzee do politics? And a scholar argued that even animal do politics. Now then one can write about politics beyond boundaries. There are some global issues, right, which has been debated and frequently debated in 20th and 21st century, like war, terrorism, right, inequality, poverty, climate problem, nuclear threat, right? So the term political has become so broader that even not a single entity is left behind, right? Everything comes under the term political, and it has become so broader term, right? With this we can end. Then we will move to the next class, next question, second B. Lots of questions are left. Now the second question is, Marxism is a political theory of action demanding a strict compliance with its core principles. Comment. Now again, this is question which is not direct question. You can say that one has to understand the question. Now in introduction, one should start with Marx. What Marx said in the thesis of Pierre Bagh. And Marx said that the philosophers have interpreted this world differently, but the point is to change it. And Marx developed socialism, what he called scientific socialism, and depicted the earlier version of socialism as a utopian socialism, and that socialism is not achievable. Right? So one can begin introduction with this. Marx, in his thesis of Feuerbach, argued that right, philosophers have interpreted philosophers have interpreted the world differently. The point is to change it. The point is to change it. He making an appeal. He's making an appeal for action. He is making an appeal for action, for change, right? Marx predicted that Marx and Engel analyzed socialism and called their version of socialism as a scientific socialism. Called their version of socialism as scientific socialism. Scientific socialism. And depicted earlier version of socialism as utopian socialism. Utopian socialism. Marx laid several principles for revolution, for the change, right? He laid several principles. They laid several theory, right, to change the society. In the society, right? Like can't do anything. Like society, like historical materialism, right? Dialectical materialism, revolution, socialism, right? Surplus value, and so on. Right. Now, after Marx, there are multiple orthodox Marxists like Lenin, Mao, who actually strictly followed these principles for their revolution and believed that, right, that only the working class can do revolution. However, Lenin and Mao both added few terms. For example, Lenin actually added one-party democracy. Right, one-party democracy, what he called the vanguard party, that is needed for revolution. Right. So if you look at, you have to write that Marxism is not about Lenin, Mao, right, Stalin, were orthodox Marxists. Orthodox Marxists followed Marx's idea blindly. Marx's idea blindly, right? However, they also added some idea like Lenin proposed vanguard theory, vanguard party theory, or Mao, added antagonistic and non-antagonistic contradiction within Marxism, right? Antagonistic and non-antagonistic contradiction in the society. And then you have to evaluate, right? Marx theory was a theory of action rather than a practice. Orthodox Marxists followed the Marx idea, and they also added valuable points to change the society, right? And with this, one has to end. Now let me move to the next question. Now here the question is the nature of relationship between equality of democratic citizenship, and liberty of citizen is influenced by economic equality. Basically, this is a question from the concept equality, right? And there is a debate whether equality is a threat to liberty or whether liberty is actually had created inequality, right? So one can begin with relationship between equality and liberty, right? There is a relationship between liberty and equality. And philosophers have raised the question that does liberty poses a threat to equality? Question mark. Or equality is an issue that create restrictions in liberty, right? Now there are two perspectives. One is liberal perspective. A liberal argue that equality is a threat to liberty. Equality is a threat to liberty because equality, when we equalize the society, right, every person becomes restricted. Their liberty has become restricted. Now, if you look at another theorist like Tocqueville, and Tocqueville argued that especially the political equality, right, one person, one vote, one value, has turned into tyranny of majority, right? So political equality right, or democracy may turn into the tyranny of majority, and that is becomes threat to the individual liberty, right? Now, in many states, like look at Germany, where Hitler used democracy, political equality, and turned into the minority, and that was a threat to the individual liberty, right? On the other hand, Marxism argued that liberty is a threat to liberty has posed threat to equality, especially economic equality, especially economic, especially economic equality. Now, Marx argues that liberty in capitalism has produced, inequality between the bourgeoisie and the workers. Marx argued that liberty in capitalism has produced inequality between bourgeoisie bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Proletariat. Right, I will write less, I'll speak more because there is a lots of issue in writing. And after that, new liberal principle like John Rawls, right? Or not new liberal, the social liberals. Social liberals argued that there can be, a complementary between the liberty and equality. Liberty can be provided, but the state must address the economic and social inequality, right? And here, if you look at the concept is to reduce inequality. To reduce inequality, like Amartya Sen, Jindare, Dworkin, all these philosophers talked about there can be complementary, equality and liberty both can be complementary. First, the state should give liberty to everyone, right? At the same time, a state must impose progressive taxation, and must address the social and economic equality. So therefore, in democracy, liberty and equality both are interrelated, and few scholars think that they are in conflict, like liberals and Marxists, but no, social liberals like John Rawls, Jindare, Amartya Sen, right, argue that there can be complementary between liberty and equality in democratic society, right? Democratic citizen can assert for the equality. For example, right to city. Right to city is an example where the poor of the city have democratic citizenship, right? They have claim on the city because they are maker of the city, right? So one can give example also. Now let me move to the next question. Now the next question is third A, and it is a debate between human rights, which is a universal idea, right? And if you look at human rights, is caught between the limitations of both universalism and cultural relativism, right? Now, first you write humor. What is human right? Right? Human right is a set of rights, explained by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights passed by the United Nations resolutions on 10th of December 1948, right? Now, there are, if you look at UDHR, it has a preamble and 30 articles, and it provides a set of rights to all people of the world because of being human, right? And then you write about Karl Bashar. Karl Bashar divided human rights into three generations of rights. Karl Bashar divided uh, human right, human right in three generation of right. Three generation of right. First generation of right is civil and political equality. Civil and political equality. That is mentioned under Article 3 to 22 in the UDHR. Right? Now second is economic welfare right. Economic welfare rights. Right. Economic welfare rights are discussed between Article 23 to 27. Here Article 3 to 22 in the UDHR. Where? In the UDHR. Here it is again UDHR. This is the second generation of rights. Second generation of rights evolved in 20th century by the Russian Revolution, and in the in Europe, especially in US, not UK and France, with the idea of welfare state. Now, state should do the welfare to the economy, especially economic welfare to the people. So basically, civil and political rights as first generation of rights, economic welfare of third is cultural rights or solidarity rights, right? That is second generation. Third is solidarity rights, and that is explained in Article 28 to 30. Now, if you look at this, human rights are universal in nature. It means it should be applicable in every part of the world. Now, the communitarians and also cultural relativists criticized how you can implement this universal theory of human rights around the globe. Because if you look at around the globe, there's a cultural differences, right? Now, because of the cultural differences, you cannot impose the universal theory of rights, right? Because the community is the major. Community shapes individual belief, value, attitude, faith among the individual. Notion of rights or wrong, even the goods have plural value, depends on society to society. The same one mobile have not the similar value in India and Africa. In Africa may have more value, right, for the society in general. So, cultural relativist, cultural relativist West make an attack on universal theory of rights, and they argued that the rights, even human rights should be cultural specific, and it should vary from culture to culture, right? Because the notion of rights vary from culture to culture, right? Now there was a criticism by feminists, and feminists attacked on cultural relativists, and they argued that all culture subordinates all culture subordinates women, right? And if we follow the cultural relativist argument, then women shall be subordinated and subjugated in all society. And therefore, feminists argue that some set of universal human rights should be available at everywhere in the globe, right? Then there was another scholar who argued that the culture, there is a cleavages, right? There is a cultural differences. There are another ethnic differences in every society, and society are multicultural, right? And it is not good in long run. Even Amartya Sen argued that the cultural rights is not. It helps in ghettoization. It helps in ghettoization. So there is a debate between the cultural relativist and the universal theory of human rights. Universal theory of human rights advocates argue that there should be universal theory of human rights, and they actually they are liberals who argued that. And feminists also argue that there should be universal. Cultural relativists argued that human rights should be cultural specific because culture shapes individual greatly. And with this, one can end. Now let me move to the next question, and I have to do in the very short. Now look at deliberative democracy. Deliberative democracy seeks to promote democratic decisions making about public issues among the citizen. Now, first you have to define deliberative democracy. Deliberative democracy promotes deliberation among the citizen to reach, you know, reach at agreed decision. It helps, it helps to take a decision which can be acceptable to all. That is deliberative democracy. And who are the major exponent of deliberative democracy? The major exponent of deliberative democracy are Aristotle, Sila Behnebib, Joseph Cohen, right? Jargon Habermas are the major exponent of deliberative democracy. Now, deliberative democracy seeks to promote, participation and deliberation, right? Deliberation in democracy to promote, collective decision making, a decision that should be taken by all, and there should be consensus in decision, right? And this deliberation can be initiated by anyone. This deliberation also, this deliberation also, gives sense of equality and sense of, becoming citizen. If citizens are allowed in to deliberate and discuss, they feel they are part of the society. They are part of the society. Their voice is heard, right? This gives sense of equal citizenship. Equal citizenship. There is a consensus on education, on decision making. Consensus on decision making. Decision making. Right now, in modern era, there are multiple deliberative forum, like parliament is a deliberative forum, like the gram panchayat is a deliberative forum, Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp. We are living in a deliberate age of deliberation, right, where everything is discussed, right? And even the younger people are engaged in deliberation, what is good, what is not good, right? So therefore deliberative democracy promotes, promotes democratic decision making about public issue among the citizen. Now they raise the question, can deliberation happen without participation? Participation is very necessary for deliberation. Participation basically is a primary, right? So there is a relationship between participation and deliberation. Deliberation, right? Because deliberation is important, but participation is also very important. It helps. What does it mean by the participation? The each section, each sect, each group should participate in decision making process so that the voice can be heard, right? So it can be the called bottom up approach in reaching decision making process for the public issue in any state, right? So with this, I will end because there are lots of questions are left. Now, what is this? Dharma Shastra presents a duty-centric worldview for individual. Now, if you look at Dharma Shastra like Manu Dharma Shastra, Manav Dharma Shastra, right? It talks about, so first you write about Dharma Shastra, right? Dharma Shastra is a early literature in Indian political thought, which which explains their view on state, society, individual, religion, dharma, right, authority, and so on. And Dharma Shastra represents a duty-centric worldview. Second, right? Now, why? If you look at individual level, what is duty? The Varna Ashrama Dharma, right? Individual level, no. Ashrama Dharma. Ashrama Dharma. What is now? Ashram Dharma is divided into 4 parts for individual. Now, what is that? 0 to 25, one remain brahmacharya. Right, 25 to 50, one remain garhastha. लिख जा रहे भाई. Grihastha, right? Brahmacharya. Then 50 to 75, Vanaprastha. Right? And 75 to 100, Sannyasa. So this is a duty. One person should follow the, ashram dharma. Now talk about the community centric. Now on community centric, now it is called Varna Dharma. Varna Dharma. Right? Now ancient society, Dharma Shastra divided society into 4 parts. Right? And what is that 4 part? The first is, the Brahmana. Now, Brahmana has duty. Brahmana has duty. According to the Dharma Shastra, Brahmana has to engage in knowledge, producing knowledge and disseminating knowledge. Now, second is Kshatriya. Kshatriya has to engage in protecting state. Now, third is, right, Vaishya. Vaishya has to engage in economic activity, right? And the Shudra has to engage in to serve the all three society, right? Now, apart from this, it is also talk about duty of the state. Duty of the state, that is called Raj Dharma. Raj Dharma. What is Raj Dharma? Raj Dharma, refers to maintain, right? Keep or see whether individual or community are maintained through the dharma or not. If someone is not follow the dharma, right, the king is authorized to give punishment. That is called danda, right? And Raj Dharma was not only duty but also authority. Raj Dharma was a duty for the Raja, for the king, and king must see that whether people are happy or not, right? Praja hite hitam, Raja sukhe sukham, right? After the welfare of the people, kings become happiest. That the state becomes happiest. But it is Raj Dharma is also authority. Raj Dharma, that is a duty of the state. It is also authority. What is authority? To see whether all individuals as well as all the community are maintaining dharma or not, right? Otherwise, there should be danda. There should be danda. Why danda? Because to maintain dharma. So it's a very easy question, right? It's a very easy question basically. It's very popular, right? Now let me move to the next question. Yeah. Now let me talk about the fourth question. The legitimacy adds positive value to political authority and obligation. So one should begin with legitimacy. Legitimacy refers to the acceptance of the people about political authority or any social practices, right? About social practices. And legitimacy is very much important, for social, economic, right? And social, economic and political stability, right? And, legitimacy is very much inherent relations with political authority. With this, one can and the legitimacy and political authority. Now talk about, directly come to the Max Weber. Max Weber. And when Max Weber talks about 3 types of political authority, and correspondingly there are 3 types of legitimacy, right? Legitimacy. And if you have legitimacy, people will oblige you, people will obligate you, people will follow you, right? Obligation means, it is a feeling that I should obey, Obligation means it is a feeling that I should perform the duty. I should do it. Right? So Max Weber talks about the first political authority, and he talks about traditional. Traditional authority. Now, what is traditional authority? Traditional authority comes from the tradition, customs, conventions, like the Raja's authority, or the authority of a religious guru, that is your family guru, right? So this is or tribal chief, that is come from the tradition. Then is charismatic authority. Charismatic authority. Right. What is charismatic authority? Authority a person extract from his charisma, like the Nehru or Gandhi or Narendra Modi, or for example, in Africa, Nelson Mandela has charismatic authority. Right. Charismatic authority. Right. And third is legal rational authority. Legal rational authority. Now, legal rational authority, we would argue that it is a modern one and it is based on law. Basically, it is very much rational, and because it is based on law. The modern bureaucracy possesses legal rational authority, and this is why people obey the bureaucrat, because people think that they are actually legally, lawfully appointed, right? There is a fair competitions. Now, so this three political authority has three corresponding legitimacy, right? Traditional authority has traditional legitimacy, charismatic authority has charismatic legitimacy, and rational legal authority has legal rational legitimacy. And people, obey all these depends on the society, depends on who have put in what situation, right? And accordingly, people obey. So legitimacy, right? What happens? There is no legitimacy. What happens when there is no legitimacy, right? What if there is a crisis of legitimacy? What if there is crisis of legitimacy? What if there is a crisis of legitimacy? There is a If there is a crisis of legitimacy, there is a crisis of governability. Right? One cannot govern when there is a crisis of legitimacy. For example, Sheikh Hasina was unable to govern the Bangladesh because she faced crisis of legitimacy, acceptance of the people. Or Indira Gandhi have faced crisis of legitimacy, and that actually transformed into the crisis of governability. Right? Indira Gandhi imposed emergency because she was not able to govern, right? So there was, and what state does for the to earn the legitimacy or to for obligation? What state, modern state does? State does to generate obligation or legitimacy, right? What a state does? Now, a state do actually follow several programs for earn legitimacy. First is, the election, right? Election. Now, every state conduct election, whether it's an authoritative state, even China conducts election, right? Russia conducts election, right? Putin is elected leader, right? In democracy, state conducts election so that people can accept that, okay, that leader is accepted leader, right? And people obey them. Then election, then, follow the rule of law. Bad. Follow the rule of law. Now, every leaders follow the rule of law, right? Law may be whatever the made by the state, but every follow state, modern state follow the rule of law. The third is give, live on festivals. Live on festivals, right? And greet the people on festivals. This is also to earn legitimacy, right? Then celebrate national festivals. Celebrate national festivals. Now, like for example, Har Ghar Tiranga was actually to earn legitimacy from the people. If and if consider if people would not have been taken Tiranga Har Ghar Tiranga campaigning seriously, now government thought that there is a serious issue, right? Now, fifth is constitution and constitutionalism. Constitution and constitutionalism, right? Even China has a constitution. Russia has constitution, America has constitution, India has constitution. Every modern state actually run by the constitution, right? And they actually argued that this is something to generate, legitimacy in modern state for the political authority and to follow the obligation, right? So I'll move the next question. Now, critically examine Plato's theory of forms. So first, one should write introduction about Plato, right? About Plato, right? Plato was a great philosopher, and it is said that Plato is philosophy and philosophy is Plato. One can be, it is also said that one can be Platonic or anti-Platonic, but no one can be non-Platonic, right? So with this introduction, now Plato argued that there are two types of world, right? One is, world of idea, world of idea, and second is world of matter, world of matters, world of matters, right? The world of idea is a real world, right? And world of matter is a reflection of idea. It is an image copy of idea. So idea is real. Idea never changes. It remain always in this, right? Remain intact. It does not changes. What changes? The world of matter. Similarly, like soul never die, right? What die? What degenerate? The body, right? And what is the body? Body is a reflection of the soul. Body is a reflection of the soul, right? So he argued that the world of idea is, perfect, perpetual, never changeable, always it is a permanent. However, the world of matter changes, right? World of matter changes, it become, it destroy, it decay, right? What does not change? The world of idea, right? And if you look at, he talks about, so who can give you the idea? Any philosopher or soul can teach you the world of idea, right? So soul can teach you. If your soul is, the rational soul, it can teach you the idea, right? And you can explain any idea, right? And he argued that, that there are two types of world and world of idea. So they say basically he talks about the theory of being and theory of becoming, the world of being and world of becoming. And the world of matter is just reflection of the world of idea. Fine, right? Who's criticized? Now question is critically examined. Now Aristotle attacked the theory of form proposed by Plato, and Aristotle argued that theory of world and theory of matter are not different but both are same, right? Ideas are reflection of matters, right? Idea and matters both are interdependent. They are not separate, they are interdependent, right? The ideas are qualities of the matter. So Aristotle rejected Plato's, idea of theory of form, right? Now let me move to the next question. Now the fourth C, that is Manevendranath Roy political thought, highlighted the humanistic aspects of Marxism. Now, Manvendranath Roy was a great Marxist and leader in India's freedom struggle, right? His life, changed. His life can be divided into three parts. One was he was a revolutionary. He was engaged in multiple dacoity, right? Second was he was a Marxist, where he, analyzed India's national movement, and he said that Indian national movement actually led by the bourgeoisie, right? It had three class: upper middle class, lower middle class, and the peasantry and the workers. But the peasantry and workers' interest was different than the upper class, middle class, and lower middle class. And third is humanistic aspect, humanism. Humanism. Now here Marxists become critique to, Aman Roy became critique to Marxism, and he proposed humanism. Other, he proposed humanism, but his humanism was humanistic aspects of Marxism. Marx also think about the people from the below. Marx also think on people from the below, right? And Aman Roy also think on, the democracy should be from below. Democracy should be from below, and power to the people. Power to the people. His idea of development was also bottom-up approach, right? What was development? Bottom-up approach of development. He thought about partyless democracy. He talked about partyless democracy. Marx also talks about partyless democracy, right? A partyless society. Partyless democracy. And he said people should change, social change should take place from the below, right? Social change should take place from the below, right? Now if you look at Marxism was actually talked about revolution. He did not talk about revolution, right? He talked about cultural transformation. Cultural transformation. And unlike Marx, Aman Roy was in favor of liberty, spirit, equality, right? Rationalism, right? That should promote it in India, and there should be change. There should be change from the below. So Aman Roy's idea of humanism was basically humanistic value of the Marxism, because Marxism also think about the lowest strata of the society. Aman Roy also talked about the lowest strata of the society, right? But there was a difference between Marxism and Aman Roy's idea, right? So with this, I will stop here, and I don't think the second part I could be able to complete if I start now, right? So second part, section B, I will do sometime, right? On Saturday probably. So with this, I'll stop here. See you.